Hey, everybody. How's it going? Terry Slater here. Today, I wanted to chat with you about looking at some options as far as whether or not you should stop saving while you're trying to pay off debt. So I know that there is some, I guess I would say like maybe like conventional advice out there that says to stop saving while you're paying down debt. And the notion behind that is that you're being more aggressive about getting out of debt, right? So if that's something that's just kind of like nagging and lurking off to the side, if you stop saving and instead take that money and redirect it towards paying off the debt, you'll just get there that much faster. But I also don't think that the answer is quite that cut and dry. So a couple things that I want you to think about first. As far as the household dynamics, so maybe it's just you, maybe it's you and a spouse, significant other, partner. I want you to think about, how does saving and debt make you feel? Some people will get really nervous or anxious knowing that they have debt, or maybe they feel suffocated by it. And then sometimes people actually feel equally, if not more, anxious or nervous if they don't have savings. And so I think that there's some dynamic there where you just want to, that's a conversation, right? So if there's more than one of you that's making the financial decisions, I want you to have a conversation where you just start to like talk about what feels more important to both of you. And if it happens to be one of those things where it's kind of like a 50-50 or you don't see eye to eye on it, that's where you get to start looking at, how are we going to compromise? And the word compromise generally means that both of you are giving a little or taking a little. So if you have, let's just make up some numbers here. Let's say that you've got, $50,000 in debt and only about $3,000 in savings. And one person feels very nervous about the lack of savings, but you're also trying to actively pay down the debt. If you're going to, let's say you're going to be putting maybe an extra $1,000 a month towards these goals, which are now maybe competing goals, then I want you to look at, first of all, one of them is going to cost you more in the long run. And you can look at that both ways. So one is that you're not earning as much interest if you're not putting away as much money. But the other is that you're paying more in interest the slower, the longer it takes you to pay off debt. So you can weigh that out. But on like just a really simplistic measure, you can just say, how about if we put $500 a month towards savings or $500 a month towards debt? And then at what point will you have enough savings that'll make you feel comfortable that then you can like redirect the rest more aggressively to debt or something like that, right? Maybe it's going to be vice versa. Maybe it's like, look, let's just get like 5,000 in savings first, and then I'll feel comfortable enough to like throw everything else at debt. So this is a conversation that you're going to have, and it's a decision point that you get to make. Same thing if it's just you as an individual. I want you to think about, how do you feel about a lack of savings or having debt weighing on top of you? So just think about those things and kind of like get at like how you feel. So the second thing that I want to mention is a little bit of like that cost I just talked about. It's opportunity cost, right? Meaning that like every decision has some sort of a cost associated with it. And here I want to talk about like the time value of money, which is essentially like, compound interest. So the notion is that, if you, let's take like an 18-year-old, for example. If an 18-year-old puts $10,000 into a retirement account and then like forgets about it, that money is just going to grow kind of quietly off to the side. And then all of a sudden one day you look up and it's grown quite exponentially, right? So that's compound interest, but it's also time value of money, because if a 45-year-old sticks $10,000 in an account and then just forgets about it, it's still not going to catch up to the same as what would have happened if you had put that away earlier, right? It's just because time. So that's something to consider, is how much debt do you have and how long is it going to take you to pay that off? And I think that can be a really key deciding factor. So there's two things that you want to look at here. Number one, when you're looking at whether or not you should stop saving in order to pay off debt, I first want you to think about, do you have any type of an employer sponsored or an employer funded like retirement plan. And if your employer offers some sort of a match, at least do what's necessary to get that match. So if the employer matches 4%, if you put in 6%, but the employer matches just up to 4%, then scale back your giving, wow, why am I saying donations? Scale back your percentage that you're saving, you're withholding to only the 4% so that you can get that match. So then I know that if you're used to putting away 6% or 8% or even more, it can feel weird to like scale that back. But if you scale that back, it's only with the idea and the notion that you're now going to take that money and put it towards the debt. But you still want to capitalize on getting that employer match because essentially that's free money, right? But also when I talk about how much debt do you have and how long will it take to pay it off, this can also be a big deciding factor. So in my situation, there was about $200,000 in debt that needed to be paid off, and that took about 6 years. And if I think back on it, I don't believe that we were in any kind of a position where we had any sort of an employer match to even take advantage of. So we essentially just did not put any money into retirement at all. Still had a little bit of an emergency fund, but we were not putting any money into retirement at all while we paid off the debt because it was such a huge amount of debt. But let me tell you something. Looking back on it now, if I personally could do it over again, I would be putting some money away towards retirement because I feel like having just missed out on 6 years worth of growth, it was a little bit, I don't want to say detrimental. That makes it sound so very like heavy and kind of final, and it wasn't really like that. But I do think that in hindsight, I would have been at least putting something into retirement savings while also paying down the debt because it took so long. So I really feel like 6 years is a lot of time to just like miss out on that market growth, right? When you have the money invested. So, but that's a couple of things I want you to weigh out. So how long do you think it'll take to pay off the debt? If you think your debt's going to be paid off in like 18 months, then it may be okay to just totally stop putting into savings or retirement in order to just like pummel that debt and get it out of there as fast as possible. But if you know that you're going to have like a much longer stretch of paying it down, then you might want to consider, taking advantage of having some money invested in the market. But still, I think this is a further point of discussion that I don't want to dive into deeply here, but another point of discussion is how much money can you earn in interest in the market as opposed to what you're paying on your debt. And so like if you think about like some low interest debt, like a mortgage, like a lot of times you can be making like, let's just say 8% when you're invested in the market, but you're only borrowing at like 2 to 3%. So that's why some people are like, I'm okay having a mortgage because I'm only paying 2% and I'm invested at, let's say 8%. So still even though you've got a mortgage, you're still growing, like you're getting in excess 6%, right? By being invested in the market. Whereas instead, if you were not investing and you were taking all that money and paying off the debt, you're not covering the spread, if you will. Anyway, I don't want to say any more about that, but that's also a consideration when you're looking at your debt. And that's why like high interest debt is always going to be like a priority to get that paid off. And I don't mean necessarily like in the order of highest interest to lowest interest, but I just mean if you're paying an interest rate on your debt that's higher than what you can get if you're invested in the market, you got to focus on paying off that debt, right? Because it's costing you a lot. And so I think that covers most everything, but essentially I just want to kind of highlight that if you are currently putting away a lot of money into savings, I know a lot of people really hate the idea of stopping their savings in order to pay off debt. But I want you to think about, if you've got, let's say $2,000 a month is going into your retirement or into some sort of savings. If you were to suddenly take that $2,000 and divert it now into paying down debt, how quickly would you get out of debt? And so that's, you're basically just shifting money from one place to another. And if the debt is costing you more than, what your investments are, you definitely want to get rid of that high interest debt. So again, the decision is ultimately always up to you, but these are just some things that I want you to weigh out, like how much of the debt do you actually have, and how much are you otherwise saving too. So I do see a great comment here. Definitely trying to get high credit card debt paid off that has a ridiculous interest rate, right? Yeah. So if it's a high interest rate, and again, I'm going to say anything that's like over 8%, totally focus on paying that off first too. Yeah, great comment, Lisa. All right, that's all that I have for you guys today. It's the weekend. I hope that you are going to get out there and enjoy it wherever you are in the world. If you have a situation that you would like to talk about and want to know, if I could help you out through coaching at all, I'm going to put a link on the screen there where you can give me a buzz. I offer a free 30-minute call where we can just talk about like what your scenario is and whether or not it would be beneficial to get a little bit of help to, move you down the path. So I've got that information up there too. You can always subscribe to my channel and also check out this playlist here, and you can watch a lot of other videos that give you some really good tips too. So, all right, take care everyone and have a great day. Bye.